Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Singularity Lab. We've got an amazing show for you today. Luis Jimenez is actually finishing up his conversation with Lou Elizondo over on the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Thank you so much for joining me here at the Singularity Lab. He'll be popping in shortly, but we've got an amazing guest for you today. We've got John Greenewald, creator of the Black Vault, is here with me in the studio. We're going to pop him on in here 1 second. If you don't know who John is, he has been working to declassify as many documents as possible with FOIA requests from the federal government of the United States for a very, very long time. We're going to learn all about what he's been doing. And we're going to be talking about the Pentagon UAPTF report. We're going to be talking about the unclassified version, as well as what can be done to get at the classified version. So again, welcome everybody. And without further ado, John Greenewald. John, how are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, brother, it's great to have you. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this today. So let's dig right into this. What on earth got you? I mean, this is a lot of work. You put in a lot of time, a lot of effort into getting these documents released from the government. Can you tell us about what drives you? What's your passion? What got you started doing this?
Sure. Yeah, I started when I was 15 years old. So we're talking now, this will be my 25th birthday of running the Black Vault.
Wow.
And really, I wish I had a better story other than I was just simply curious and wanted to know the truth behind UFOs. UFOs was the first thing that I started on. Started looking at that topic and hammering the government with Freedom of Information Act requests. And what was true in 1996 is even more true now, which is they make you wait for answers. And while I was waiting, I started researching other government secrets, realizing, okay, UFOs are great. Let's see what else is there. And so you name the government secret, I was going after it, would go after pretty much anything that I could find or think of. And I tackled pretty much every government agency you could think of. And I was starting to send them letters. And this was actually prior to when most of them were even taking them via email. So you would have to literally print them out, lick a stamp, put it on, and away it goes. And so I was doing them stacks at a time, and I would put them out there. So that's how I started. And here we are 25 years later, almost 3 million pages. Have archived some other researchers' material as well through FOIA, but those are all 3 million pages of government documents.
And those are all available on the Black Vault. People can actually literally go and utilize the documents that you've gotten from the government and do their own research.
That's correct. Yeah, it's all free, 100%. There's no registration required. There's no nothing. You can just go on, download, and have fun.
That's fantastic. I think a lot of people don't realize that. I didn't realize this till the other day. We were on one of these Twitter Spaces, and we were chatting about this stuff, and we were talking to Danny Silva and some other folks, and we actually had a woman who was somebody who actually receives FOIA requests, and it's her job to go get the information. I was stunned by how much money you can spend trying to get FOIA requests. How do you fund this? I mean, not only does it take a lot of time and energy, but obviously, I'm also curious, like how much these requests cost.
Yeah, it depends on what you're going for and ultimately who you are, meaning what category you fit in. That determines what kind of fees you are. I'm lucky. I've worked in documentary television making for History Channel, Discovery Channel. I've written quite a few articles, get picked up quite a few places. So I fit in what's called the news media category. And so what's good about that is generally you don't pay for the search fees, which are the ones that really rack up. You pay for the reproduction only. So the commercial requesters, those that are, let's say, getting information and then put a price tag on it. So I turn around and I go, well, okay, I'll give this document to you, but you got to give me $10. And then you pay me for it, and I commercialize the venture. So that's what they mean by that. Or I take everything and compile it into a book or something and only sell the raw documents. That's commercializing it. That's when you pay for everything. So long-winded way of saying it kind of varies from person to person. It is expensive and can get very expensive. There's cases where I've spent literally hundreds and hundreds of dollars to get the material Namely, the mind control stuff was one example that took me over 2 years and quite a few $100s to raise the money for and to get it. And so that kind of stuff adds up. So to support it, it's all out of my pocket. But, recently created a Patreon in the last year or so, that kind of stuff. So I have a lot of support in that way where people believe in the site. 100% of it goes right back into the site. And so in the Patreon pages, I tell people what the money goes for. I mean, literally, tell them when it comes to equipment, like this behind me right there, that scanner, which is a monster of a machine. That was courtesy of the support that people give. So I show people what it goes for. I don't just, put it in my pocket and go out to dinner that night. So that's where the support comes from.
But are you able to do this full time, or do you still have a full time job, or what?
Yeah, full-time job. A couple of years back, I created my own business, totally unrelated to the Black Vault, and in short, took off. And now I do that full time. It's about 70 or so hours a week. So I'm up 4 a.m. every morning and working mostly on that. But I developed that business to have fun with the Black Vault, because there's no money in giving away information for free, and that part gets super expensive when it comes to the server space. I actually spend more in servers than I do FOIA requests. So to handle, it's about 20 to 25,000 people a day on average, and then spikes if a media story runs or something like that. I mean, it's not uncommon to have 50, 75, over 100,000 people a day. And they generate, literally millions of hits every 24 hours. And so the servers, I have multiple dedicated servers to run that. It gets pricey just because, the amount of traffic downloading terabytes worth of data is insanity every month.
Somebody just mentioned that you're sounding more echoey than usual. I wonder if it's coming through your computer audio or if it's coming through your mic. Does it look good?
You're my only channel open, so there shouldn't be any feedback.
Okay. It's like you sound pretty good on my end. I was just curious.
No echo.
Okay, no worries. All right, so tell me a little bit about FPMR wants to know, is your database searchable? Can people actually go and utilize your database and search names, search keywords, and that sort of thing?
Sure. So it's really tough to make a search engine that is 100% accurate on near 3 million pages. Right. And that's been a challenge for a long, long time to make a viable search engine. The short answer is yes, there is one. Does it 100% encompass the entire archive? Well, I have to power it through Google, and Google doesn't mine 100% of all those documents because it's huge. So in massive sites like that, unless you pay literally thousands upon thousands of dollars a month, literally, I mean, it's insane how much Google will charge for a dedicated search engine. I just have to go at the mercy of their robots and how much they mine the site. So not to get too technical there. Yes, there's a search engine. Yes, you can search it. But the other issue, too, is you're talking about documents that are like 30th generation photocopies. So you're not talking about crystal clear documentation that's OCR'd and you can search it easily. Right. You're talking about stuff that was typed 30, 40, 50 years ago, if not more. And so for a computer to understand what word that is, that's essentially the challenge, is getting a computer to understand the wording of it all.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally understand. A lot of people are asking, you said there's a rumor going around that you've got to drop tomorrow, but we're going to hold off on that for a second. We'll get to that. We'll ask that question in a few minutes. I did want to get to, before we got there, I'd love to learn a little bit more about what your reaction was to the 7-page unclassified version of the UAPTF report, and then kind of what you gathered from that, or what was your initial reaction to it?
Sure. So for me, I think that the initial reaction was I was very let down, because it was only the 9 total pages, but subtract a couple with the cover page and the silly appendix in the back. So you had very little information. You really did. And so my initial reaction was a big letdown, and that's how I felt. But I will say that after I read it a couple times, I realized that there were a few tidbits that were the gold. well, as good as gold can be in a document like this.
Right.
I wanted case files. I wanted, even if it was debunked, there was a reason for it. I wanted to see a name, a date, a time. If it was a deflating balloon, I wanted to see the deflating balloon. You know, I mean, I want comfort knowing that the UAPTF is taking it seriously and can debunk, right? Because there's a lot of rumors out there about all this leaked material that we know is authentic. But for the most part, they're not saying if it's unidentified. And you have somebody like Mick West who gets a lot of heat, but I really like Mick and respect him a lot because he really does a lot of great analysis. I don't always agree, but I mean, he's out there and he's doing hands-on work. My whole point with this is the fact that they let this information get out. I mean, I'm sorry, they let it out. There's no, they're not stopping it, right? I mean, so there's a couple things you can deduce from that. I'm not sure if you want me to go down that road right now.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can tell that they're letting this happen. They haven't done really anything to stop it, and they're very quick to comment on it, which is the bizarre thing. With the exception of this last video, which Susan Gough told me they just can't confirm it. I'm trying to get them to elaborate and to tell us why, because of all the other visuals. They go, yep, it's real. Yep, utilized by the UAPTF. Yep, that's all taken by the U.S. Navy. So they were very quick to just give those answers. Now on this one, they're like, yeah, we can't really confirm anything. Right. So why? Is it because it wasn't that great? Okay, well then say that. Like there's nothing discernible in the video, so there's nothing they can say, or we can't comment on it because it's classified. You know, I mean, what is the reasoning? I believe it's the former versus the latter, but that's just me.
Okay. Right.
So that being said, I mean, there's obviously a Pentagon involvement to a point where they're not that concerned about these leaks. So that's why I wanted to see if they would take either those leaked materials and put it in the report and say, okay, USS Omaha, this date, yeah, the media has been bantering it's UFOs, but this is what we've determined, and outline it. You know, because for Mick West to be able to, or people like Mick West, I'm not picking on him, but rather complimenting him, that he can bring up viable answers very, very quickly with the poor evidence at hand, then what is the UAPTF doing if it's truly unidentified? And that's the question mark for me. Is it truly unidentified to them? Like, do they truly have no idea? The only thing we know, and this is a common misconception, I see it all the time, the only thing we know that's unidentified is the FLIR, the gimbal, and the go fast. That's it. Nothing else that is leaked out, despite the backstories and the reporting from anonymous sources and this and that. Despite all of it, those are the only 3 videos that the U.S. Navy will admit, or the government as a whole will admit, are unidentified. The rest, we have no idea. So back to your question. Sorry to go off on a tangent.
No, it's great. Yeah, I have a follow-up question on the other route. Yeah,
follow up. But to finalize, you know, answering your question, it was a big letdown. That was why. But at least there were those little nuggets of gold that you go into and go, okay, it's a very small percentage of the 144 cases that really looked like the more legitimate ones, the ones that we would want to get our hands on. And that's what I started picking apart. And literally within days, mostly the first day or two after the report, had filed over 45 Freedom of Information Act cases, nitpicking every single word out of that report and figuring out what evidence I could use from that. And that's what you have to do with every topic, by the way. So if anybody wants to dabble in FOIA, that is one of the best things I can recommend, is you literally look and analyze every single word on a document, because you never know what FOIA request that could spawn. And then that FOIA request branches off into 6,000 other ones. And then you're like me 25 years later. But that being said, that's what I do.
Right. I'm going to go ahead and bring Lou in. He just popped out of another interview with Lou Elizondo and his dad. What's going on, Lou?
What's happening, guys?
Good to see you.
Mr. Greenwald, what's shaking?
How are you?
You got a fresh cut today. Yeah, pleasure's mine.
Had to do it just for this show.
Yeah.
I was shabby on your show, but I figured for this one I better look good.
Hey, you're always looking good, Mr. Greenwald.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Flattery gets you everywhere, so thank you for that.
Amen. Amen. Really great haircut. Hopefully you'll come back to the Singularity Lab.
I believe that compliment came from the UCR, Michael.
Oh yeah. Oh, did it?
Yeah,
Is that right?
Yeah, pretty sure that was from the unidentified celebrity group. But whatever. It's your show.
So question for you. Okay, so I want to follow up a little bit more on that piece. So you said that the government has only said FLIR, gimbal, go fast of what we have, what the public has. These are the only unidentified videos. So the things that Jeremy Corbell has released, the triangle videos, things like that. I remember when the triangle video came out, and Susan Gough immediately said, yes, this is ours. Yes, we're aware of this. Yes, this is part of the UAPTF is aware of this, but she didn't say it's unidentified. Is that,
Correct.
am I accurate in saying that?
100%, yep. And,
Okay.
and again, not to beat the dead horse, that's a common misconception. And the reason why I beat that dead horse is I feel that that is a very important unwritten chapter in this. And I was hoping that UAPTF would have that chapter, so to speak, that would tell us why and bring in those visuals. But it had nothing. So now that chapter is still unwritten. Why won't they say it? Couple quick theories is that they learned their lesson with the FLIR, gimbal, and go fast. So I was the one that originally wrote that and got that from the Navy. I fell off my chair when they gave it to me. I did not expect that. Honestly, I'm not even exaggerating. I mean, I looked at that. I said, there's no way that the Navy just admitted these 3 videos are UAP. Like, that was unheard of. For decades, they had never acknowledged either a UAP or UFO captured by their own cameras. So that was huge. So did they learn their lesson? Because that went viral. I wrote that story. It was like September, somewhere around September 11th. But I wrote that story, and within 24, 48 hours, I mean, it was picked up everywhere. There were hundreds of outlets that covered that, because again, that was just the first time that the Navy had ever done that, or the military as a whole, the government as a whole. So did they learn their lesson? You know, did they realize, okay, let's never give Greenewald that again, but let's never give the public that again, because the reaction, the motivation, the excitement that the public got just from that was too much. So that's one way to look at it. Or the other is this does tread into a classified tech world. And for them to use this potentially as a primer to the real UAPs that are out there, the ones they can't identify, these newer ones that they won't label, that maybe they're used as a primer. We know that Project Blue Book did that. They had, we'll call it a ufological Rosetta Stone, if you will.
Right.
And they literally had mounds of text reference, photograph reference, and even film reels. And we know that by the actual evidence. And I've got a lot of it on the blackvault.com, where stuff was found in a guy's garage that used to work on Project Blue Book. An amazing story. It's one of my favorite stories in UFO world. And so all of that information was digitized, but in that were those reference documents. And so we know that that was a genuine UFO program. And so we look at history, because history often repeats itself. And so with this new effort, the UAPTF, are some of these visuals that they're allowing to leak out, are they part of that identified stack? And they're allowing it to leak out, or maybe they're not orchestrating it, but they're allowing it because they just don't care. It's unclassified, it's a blimp, a balloon, or whatever it may be. So I'm not ready to bet my house on that, but I would say that that's just as plausible as them saying, yeah, these are UFOs. You know, we have no idea. Now, again, they could very well be UAPs to the U.S. Navy or the UAPTF. I don't know. I'm just saying that either way would not surprise me at all.
Right. I'm so fascinated. A couple things. Number one, you said that the 3 videos, FLIR, Gimbal, and Go Fast, were all admitted to being UFOs or UAPs. Anything else is not. I was fascinated when the triangle video first came out, because we were digging through that with a fine-tooth comb too, and I noticed the same thing. I said, well, maybe this is a training. Maybe this has to do with some sort of training that they're showing in the Navy, going, what's this? And like, they're supposed to identify it as something not a UFO versus a UFO. I was very curious about that when that first came out.
I think everybody was. I think everybody really wanted to think that was a triangle or pyramid-shaped craft. And I'm not taking anything away from Jeremy's story. Rather, it's just hard to verify. So right now, all we have is the video. And that's where I don't consider myself a debunker, but I understand them in the sense that you can only deal with the evidence that you have. And even though we do find value, and I personally find value in testimony, there's only so far you can go with that, with testing a theory or creating some type of plausible conclusion out of something. And so with this video, yes, Jeremy could very well have the 100% truth that his anonymous source or sources are saying that this is something the Navy can't identify. That may be true. But right now, we don't know that. So all we have is the video. And again, you look at the analysis of it, and we want it to be something that can't be explained, but rather there's a perfectly plausible explanation, and the key is replication. So for somebody to go out with a very similar, if not identical, night vision goggle with a triangle-shaped aperture and capture something that is nearly identical, I mean, that to me, you got to look at that and go, okay, so why is that? Why do we have the story coming from Jeremy? Which, again, I'm not saying he's either fabricating or what. I'm just saying, why is that story there? Why is that video utilized by the UAPTF? And why won't the Pentagon comment on whether or not it's identified or unidentified? Right? So those are all key questions that I think a lot of people overlook. They just look at that, and it morphs into a video that's UAP, and the government has no idea what it is. And to prove my point, that's just not social media. That's, I think it was TMZ, if I remember correctly, was showing those visuals going, the Navy can't identify these. They're unknown. It's like, wait, 60 Minutes did the same thing. And it's like, when you look at that, that then instills false information, erroneous data out into the public ether. So why is that important? Well, it's because then when people start getting into the topic and they realize what they've heard is kind of bunk in that area, it's going to turn
everything
people
else
off.
Right.
Yeah, and that to me is where people will lose the passion. We need to debunk where we need to debunk, and we need to focus on what we can't debunk. And I think we've collectively, anyway, lost that, especially when you look at media coverage and television shows and stuff like that. They want the flashy headlines. That's all they want. They don't want the truth.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask, I've developed my standard, like my barometer for whether or not what I'm looking at, whatever the data is it good? And the thing I always ask myself is, can I put this on a desk in front of a senator, and can I convince a senator with this data? And if the answer is no, I usually back off the data, or I don't. It's there. I could always reference it. I could always go back to it, but it's nothing that I can. It's like quicksand. I can't get a good grip in it.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people have lost, is setting up that standard. And I think that we've, in the last couple of years, in some ways raised the bar, but also lowered the bar when it comes to that standard that I think collectively a lot of people are very accepting and trusting. And if I've learned anything in 25 years about UFO stories, that's that you can't trust right away, and I kind of pull the, what was it, Ronald Reagan's mantra, trust but verify, and I think we've lost that verify. And, I consider Jeremy a friend. I like him. We chat, we talk. I have nothing against him, but we need to push. We need to understand what is he giving us and why, and we need to push and understand what is true and what is not. And not to pick on anybody, so I won't name names on this, but there's been a lot of stories that have been reported on, even in mainstream media, that just simply are not true.
Right.
And I will pick on the New York Times on this one, simply because I did a huge video on it, and they should get kind of respectfully spanked for it.
Yeah.
In that, when you attribute Harry Reid saying that there's off-world vehicles and then pull that back over 24 hours later, that's a huge blunder. We're not talking about, Joe Blow's blog here. We're talking about the New York Times.
Can I comment on that for a second?
Absolutely. Sure.
So I heard an interview with the gentleman who wrote the New Yorker piece. I'm forgetting his name right now. Gideon, yes. He was doing an interview, and they were talking about that New York Times debacle. And he referenced Leslie Kean and what a really careful reporter and journalist she is. And the understanding before that got printed was, hey, you read this, right? You understand what's in this. This is what we're printing. Like, Harry Reid was very well aware of what's going to be printed in the newspaper, as far as I could tell. And it was maybe I think what happened is he got scared when he actually saw it in print and it became a story. And then he retracted and freaked out and pulled that statement back. But to me, I mean, am I off on this, John? I mean, I feel like you'd probably have a little more info on this, but it felt a little bit like Reid was backtracking because he got cold feet.
Respectfully, I would disagree, and here's why.
Yeah.
In that there was no, I don't advertise myself as a journalist, but I like to write, and I consider myself following journalistic standards.
Right.
If I were to write an article about you, I will not paraphrase you without your quote. Meaning, I will not say, so Luis told me X, Y, and Z, but never quote you, right? That's not fair to you, and it's not fair to the readers, because they're not hearing from you. Right. They're hearing my interpretation. Going back to the New York Times article, there was no attributable quote.
Right.
So when you lay a bombshell that there are off-world vehicles and your source is former Senator Harry Reid, I'm sorry, that's not only your headline, that's not only your lead in paragraph 1, but I will bend rules and put his entire transcript of what he told me if that was on the record. But there wasn't. And if you follow Harry Reid's statements, and there's been a lot that I disagree with him on, but I will give him this. He's been very consistent.
Yes.
And he often falls back to I'm not talking about little green men. I'm not. That's his kind of catchphrase. Yeah. And so when you look at that, he has not really wavered. Yeah. So to see that New York Times thing buried in like 16 paragraphs down, that's what he said.
Right.
That's where I would respectfully disagree. And the other thing that I've learned with journalists, and this isn't a knock on them. I mean, we would all fit in this category. We don't like our work knocked or challenged. But on top of that, if it's challenged and then it's realized that it was wrong, nobody likes that, right? Like none of us would like that. But journalists are going to be extra sensitive because their masthead is the New York Times. So when you get your work essentially corrected, that's tough. And so I think that the backtracking may ultimately not be from Senator Harry Reid, but actually the journalists. And I reached out to them seeking comment, and I don't have their quotes right in front of me. I can pull it up though, but I don't have them in front of me. But I gave them the opportunity to essentially address that. Like, hey, did you have a quote? Hey, is there anything that can be added? And essentially there was nothing that could be added. It was, I don't want to paraphrase and do what I just said I hate others doing, so I'm not going to do that. But essentially there was nothing added to the conversation that said, look, we had this in writing and he backtracked, so whatever. Right. It wasn't that. And so I think it was a mistake. I think it was a big mistake. And the other thing, too, to the credit of the authors, you never know what happens during editing. That the person who's editing and doing that final pass and the true journalists that wrote the piece are now removed from it and they're putting it out there in digital form and in print. There could be an editor pass where they don't really understand the significance behind off-world vehicle, and so they just translate that maybe Harry Reid said something about debris or something, but never said off-world vehicles. They may not have understood the significance behind, just add that, sounds sexy. Because they want sexy. They don't care about truth when it comes to that final pass. Right. But that never was the case. That never came out. So in the beginning stages, I was given the benefit of the doubt. Like, hey, maybe this was just a lost in translation thing and a final pass. But that never happened.
Yeah, we have a huge problem when it comes to mainstream media in that when you publish a headline or publish a lead or publish a statement, if that gets retracted, nobody sees that. The people only see the original piece, and that's a huge problem. The other problem, I think, within the UFO community is that we have a lot of groupthink going on. I can definitely see a lot of people they get in these kind of silos of communication, and then we expand on things we think we know because we heard somewhere, and so there's this telephone effect. And then we also get very emotional, and we want to believe, right? We all want the answers, but I think we all have a bit of bias when it comes to what answers we'll accept as the truth. And I think that's something that we have to do a better job of, pining away at. And I really appreciate your pragmatic attitude and your approach to going after the truth and the facts directly to the government. Obviously, we're not, there are other places to get data than just the government, but we need as much from them as possible. I have a question for you regarding you mentioned Mick West earlier and the importance of honest, truthful, skeptical debunking. I think a lot of people have issue with tone and things like that, and they don't appreciate that sort of thing on Twitter. But I think overall, I think it's important that we debunk that. We get to the truth, right? We get to the facts. Mick West is often, he debunks the FLIR, he debunks the Givell, he debunks the Go Fast. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, because I just find it fascinating that if somebody with none of the sensor data can kind of debunk these things, how on earth would the government, with all of the sensor data, still call these things UFOs?
It's a great question, and to be, my skeptical side took over, and to approach it that way first. What I thought was very plausible was that the U.S. Navy was the one that officially designated them as UAP. The military branch, however, that also flies the skies is mysteriously mum, not only then, but still, and that's the U.S. Air Force. I thought that it was plausible that they could test classified / sensitive technology against their own, and to do so in these training environments, because what better way to test this classified tech, this cutting edge technology,
right?
What better way to do it than against the greatest Navy on the planet? Then to truly test it, don't tell them.
Right.
And right? I mean, so then you have, how convenient, training mission where the planes aren't armed. They can't fire even if they wanted to. So you essentially have a very safe environment. Right. The pilots, I know, disagree with me on that. And
right.
And
Dietrich would argue with you all day on that.
Yes,
I know. Furious.
Yeah.
And I respect that. Like, look, I'm not a pilot, nor am I going to pretend to be one. Right. So no, I will say that pilots absolutely have a different interpretation of that. But if they were looking to truly test this technology, that would be a way to do it. And I went to the Pentagon with a question about that. I mean, I didn't pose the theory and go, "Am I right?" But I rather asked, "Does a military branch test their own technology without the knowledge of potentially another, military branch?" And they said no, that they're always informed. But I thought that would pave the way for the Navy going, "Yep, to us they're unidentified, so we have no idea." And then the Air Force goes, "Idiots," and it's theirs. But they shot that down. Right. One thing, I don't know if you want to get into this, but I'll say this really quickly because I think it's a good spot for it. The counterintelligence value of this debate about UAPs and what they are and what they aren't, the counterintelligence value is more valuable than I think people realize on a worldwide scale. That the mud in the water is incredibly valuable from a CI perspective. That you're telling your friends and your enemies that you either don't know what certain things are in the sky, but you secretly do because it's yours, right? And it instills confusion to those people across the pond. And that they think that you know what they are, but you're not sure. But wait a minute, they're going on the record and getting all this flack from the public. Maybe they don't know. But if it's not theirs, it's not ours, then whose is it? That confusion for counterintelligence purposes to throw, enemies and friends alike off the scent of our own abilities is gold. And when it comes to the UAP topic, what's also fascinating is that it doesn't cost them really anything, because the mainstream media and the general public does the muddying of the water for them.
Yeah.
So if there is a CI aspect to this, and there is a concerted effort to let this happen, they're doing a good job.
Right.
Because again, you're looking at a worldwide question mark on what does America really know. Not just here with us or on these types of shows where we're having great conversations like this one, but rather on a global scale in secret dark rooms of intelligence agencies worldwide going, what in the world are they doing and what do they know and what do they have?
Well, that's why I love that that book and movie Mirage Man, because it lays that scenario out really nicely. And you're right. I think that the public does all of the covering up of secret tech for them, especially if it gets to a news level or a national news level. But what about this, John? What if it's a private company doing it? And they're trying to sell their tech to a certain branch of the military, or they've got an idea,
and they with the Navy.
Well, here's the thing: they've got a huge military contract already, and they're trying to push a certain product that they've made for the military. What better way to get their attention than to put that product in an active training session? And it's almost it's kind of like that analogy. It's better to ask for permission,
beg for forgiveness
and ask for permission, kind of thing. Where it's like, hey, I see you guys had a little intrusion over the coast of San Diego. Mm-hmm. I'd have a couple answers on that.
Yeah.
And, in a secret setting, they say, here's the project. This is what we put in your airspace. And if you guys don't get on this, I promise you somebody else will. Yeah. And sort of force their hand to into a contract, essentially.
I mean, I think it's a great idea. And it's funny, I'll play devil's advocate with myself for a second. Yeah. My initial reaction, well, probably not. They probably do it much safely because, as Michael just said, like, wow, you're going to screw with the Navy out there and, go into to some pretty sensitive areas with pilots and stuff like that. Because then your controlled, safe environment, which I know Dietrich would disagree with me on, is not as controlled or safe anymore. Right. So you do open yourself up to potentially, really creating a catastrophe. But in the same respect, I'll play devil's advocate. A lot of times when hackers will successfully get into, let's say, a CIA system or this and that, yes, there are a lot of prosecutions. A lot of them get job offers.
Yeah,
and so there is something to be said that when you show a vulnerability, potentially that's your resume right there. So who knows? I mean, it's possible. I think though that the general area, when you're talking about the 2004 encounter with that Navy installation out there on the island that was nearby, I think that there's still a lot of uncharted territory there, uncharted waters, so to speak. See what I did there with the water?
Yeah.
I'm here all week. But no, I think that there's a lot of unexplored area there that we haven't, really seen. So ultimately anything I think is possible with that.
Well, I find it fascinating that we didn't hear in the UAPTF report, we didn't hear from the CIA, right? They were completely left out of that. We heard very little from the Air Force. We know
nothing from the Air Force.
We know that the Air Force showed up after the Tic Tac events on the Nimitz. Right? These are things we know. And so there is this question, what is the Air Force hiding something? And, but even if you go back and look at the Tic Tac incident, if this is still the biggest story on the planet, whether or not it's extraterrestrial, whether or not it's interdimensional, it's still the biggest story on the planet because it potentially means either A, we've got some sort of extraordinary holographic technology, or we have true anti-gravity, which are both world changing. Maybe there's more prosaic explanation, but I don't see how, considering the sensor data, the eyewitness data that we do have available to us. For those of you just joining us, real quick, I'm going to reset the room. We've got John Greenewald with us.
Man, how cool would it be if we had John Griswold? No offense, Greenwald. No offense.
I've heard that a lot over the years.
I'm sure you have. So sorry. He is the creator of the Black Ball. He's been doing this for 25 years, folks. He's been doing FOIA requests from the government. He's got over 3 million pages on his website. Make sure you go check out the Black Vault as well, and it is searchable. We covered that as well. All right, John. So let's dig into what we're doing. How the hell?
Wait, real quick, Michael. You have to tell the people on a reset. Please like, subscribe, share this. This is we got 230 of you guys in here. We've only got 78 likes on the video, baby. Let's do this. We got Greenewald in the house.
Make sure you click the subscribe button, click the bell so you know whenever we go live. We have amazing guests like John Greenewald all the time here in the Singularity Lab and on the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Make sure you check us out over there. We are here with you 5 days a week. John,
boom.
How the hell are we going to get this 400-page classified document?
Yeah, John. Government? How are we going to get it, John? What are we going to do, buddy?
Before we go there, before we go there, about the Air Force, I don't know if you saw this, but I want to throw this out there really quick.
Oh, please.
Because this was another point that I very much overlooked the first couple times that I read the report, because you were talking about the Air Force. So I want to throw this in really quick.
Yeah.
I wrote this article on a Sunday. Shockingly, ODNI was actually responding to me on a Sunday. So the report dropped on Friday. I filed my case Saturday morning, which I'll talk to you about in a second, which you just asked me about. But then Sunday, I was doing more research on it. And ODNI was essentially responding, which was great, but they weren't giving a lot. But the one tidbit that I did overlook when I first read it, and this goes to your Air Force comment, ODNI prepared, and this is, I'm reading directly from the report. ODNI prepared this report for the Congressional Intelligence and Armed Services Committee. UAPTF and the ODNI National Intelligence Manager for Aviation drafted this report with input from, and then they listed all the agencies. What's really interesting is that the ODNI National Intelligence Manager for Aviation, did that catch anybody's attention?
Say it again.
The ODNI Intelligence Manager for Aviation. Now, the reason why I overlooked it was it's ODNI, so that makes sense.
Right.
So I tracked down who it was, and his name is Major General Daniel L. Simpson of the United States Air Force. So the agency, that the military branch that has been completely mummed, that we all keep going, where's the Air Force? Where's the Air Force? He prepared the report with the UAPTF. It says it right on page 1. So what? So that's the question mark. What happened? Like, where did we go from complete silence and mummery? I don't know if that's a word. Complete silence, and they're not talking about anything, meaning the U.S. Air Force. And yet on page 1, the UAP task force, which is the one that's largely credited for it, but in the same line they say the ODNI, I lost the screen, ODNI National Intelligence Manager for Aviation. So I reached out to ODNI. I thought that it was Major General Daniel L. Simpson, but I wanted to make sure I was right before I had blasted it out there. And went to ODNI Sunday morning. We were going back and forth a couple times. I said, can you please confirm this for me? They confirmed it. So that is the guy that had prepared that report. Largely overlooked. And again, if it was just ODNI or somebody who, was just working within the task force, I wouldn't have batted an eye at it. But the fact that it was the UAPTF as an entity and this other person, and that other person was a major general in the United States Air Force. To me, that was fascinating.
That is fascinating.
Well, I just said we didn't hear anything from the Air Force. Turns out we got the report from the Air Force.
Bingo. And that is a largely overlooked fact about this, that they played a role. So obviously they were listed listed in the whatever it was, 14 plus agencies that they rattled off that they coordinated with. So not a surprise that the Air Force was there. But the actual report being prepared by a major general from the United States Air Force in addition to the UAPTF, to me that was huge. So anyway, I wanted to throw that out to you.
Okay, so that's interesting. So what do you make of this idea that of all the incidents that they reported, the majority being in their classification in these 5 buckets and still being in other bucket, and they're still being and them saying that the things in the other bucket are not ours, right? It's not the Air Force, it's not the Navy, it's not this, it's not that, it's the other. They're unidentified. So, I mean, could they still be lying to us? I mean, obviously they can, right?
Well, I there's always that question mark in a general public report versus a classified annex or classified version of the same report. Are they misleading the public? Are they telling the truth, so to speak? I mean, you can't ask a spokesperson, "Are you guys lying?" Are these lies? Tell me. You can't do that, but you have to find ways to essentially ask and get statements. That Sunday morning, one of the other things that they did say, this is the exact quote that I got from them Sunday morning: "The unclassified preliminary assessment and classified annex are substantively, whatever, consistent." Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied. "And the key conclusions are the same in both." So essentially what they're saying is the public version and the classified version, they are the same, that their conclusions are the same, everything is the same.
Okay.
So it's not like to the public they said, yeah, 143 out of 144 unidentified, one is a deflating balloon. But then in the classified version they go, okay, well, we told the public, one thing, but look, we can identify the rest of them. So I think that that was a key statement, that they were saying that the reports align, but
Right.
there's no other conclusion to go after. Now, you did say over 400-page report.
Yeah,
That
can
is
you
not
clear
true.
that up? There's a huge question mark, because some
It
people are
is.
saying 70. Sheehan, I think, came out the other day and said 400. Where do you get your information from?
An official line. And the only reason I'm not saying it now is it is official. I do know every number you've heard is wrong, and they're not
Oh,
even close. I'm not trying to be secretive. The reason why I'm not saying it at this point, and it will likely be tomorrow morning, is the attribution. And this is out of respect to the OD&I personnel who told me. So attribution is, essentially, am I naming them or the agency? But at this point, everything is official, so I'm just getting the final clearance on how they want me to say it. But everybody is wrong. And
really?
yeah, go figure.
Wow.
So with that, I was very surprised. That came literally hours ago. So we'll again, I'm not trying to be secretive. I hate people who do that, but this is a respect thing. I'm letting you guys know that it's not over 400. It's not over 70.
Why?
It's not those. And I said on my show a couple weeks ago, and I'll say it here too. That's not a surprise. For a public version of a report to be 9 pages with the cover page and a silly appendix or whatever, and then a classified version to be like 7 times that or 40 times that. That's not to say it's not going to happen. It's just not common.
Right.
So the
Okay.
question mark for me was, where was all this information coming from? And most everybody that's told us this has either, with Luis Elizondo as the exception, has kind of gotten it through sources and this and that. And that's all great, but that's one of the reasons why I hate sources, is that not all the sources can be right in this particular case. And, they could be lying to me, and we can get into the case too if you'd like. But I have an open case. So this is all official communication about my case. I filed Saturday morning. I filed first bright and early Saturday morning a case to essentially get the classified version reviewed. Now, some people who don't understand the process may laugh at that idea, like, oh, it's classified, you'll never get it. What this essentially is it is not going through the Freedom of Information Act. Essentially, the Freedom of Information Act is part of the United States Code, Chapter 5, Section 552, for whoever's taking notes. And when you file through that, it's a FOIA request. So the quickest way that I can explain the difference between what I'm doing and the FOIA is this. Let's say I request a document in the year 2000. They black out 50% of it, and they give it to me in the year 2000. If let's say Luis then requests it in 2021 through FOIA, and there's been no review since then, what happens is they will give Luis the same copy of the document they gave me in the year 2000, 21 years later, with no re-review. And that's FOIA. Now, some agencies may actually be nice and go through it and review it again. However, this is generally what you see. Luis would get what I got in 2000. However, what I did is through what's called a mandatory declassification review, and it's a completely different part of the code. This is a part of the Federal Register, Part 1704, with ODNI. And essentially what that is saying is that I can request a document no matter the age, no matter the date, and no matter the classification, to have a mandatory review like that. So I don't have to wait 5 years, 10 years. There's a lot of erroneous information about classified information that you have to wait 25 years. That is all untrue. The document could be 3 hours old and you can request an MDR. Doesn't mean you're going to get it, but you can request the MDR. Okay. So a lot of times with what I've seen out of 10,000 plus FOIA requests is that classified information in a lot of cases shouldn't be classified. There's no rhyme or reason or justification for it to be classified. It just is. And so a lot of times you request information to be declassified, and a lot of times it gets declassified. Not all the time, but you do have those successes. So Saturday morning, I filed the case under the section that applies to ODNI, filed the case for a review of the classified report. That was accepted and already with a case number by Monday morning. And by mid that week, I had confirmation that the report was in hand and that they were coordinating with all of those other agencies that you see listed on page 1, coordinating that all of the information that's tied to them, they are being kept in the loop or they review their particular section. And that's very commonplace. That's called OCA. They're the OCA. So they're what's called the original classifying authority. So if, let's say, they do have a photo in there that was taken by a Navy pilot, the Navy would be the OCA. If they had a report from an Air Force pilot that was in there, that they had some text or whatever, that section would be U.S. Air Force, they're the OCA. And so all those OCAs are looking at all this information, and they literally look at just their paragraph. They send it back to ODNI for my case. They either sign off on it, say, nope, this is exempted or whatever, and then ODNI compiles all that feedback, does the major redactions, and then we get the report, we hope. But I do have high hopes. I don't want to mislead and say, I swear we're going to get this. I don't. There's no promise of anything. But what I will say is I have a lot of hope. And the reason is the official statement that it's a similar report. Again, we'll all find out tomorrow the length of it, and it's not impressive. So there's that. And so when we take all that information and use logic and see how previous cases that I've done with MDR have come out, I'm hopeful that we'll get a lot of it, and quite possibly even over 50% of it. That's my hope. So
do you think it's do you have any indication of whether or not this is pure? This report was purely written, or if there is video evidence that was released in relationship to the report?
That is a fantastic question, and I don't know the answer. And that is one of the other reasons why I'm holding off publishing this article. My aim was today. However, I am trying to get confirmation, in addition to the page count, what type of imagery, although I probably won't be told this and I won't be surprised, is within the 17 pages, if any, but also the attachments or anything that went along with it. Because those that are
you just said 17 pages.
There you go.
So the report is 17 pages.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
So I'm sorry, John. I'm sorry.
For what?
Why is Sheehan doing this? How did he go from 17 to 400, dude?
Yeah, I don't know. I wish I knew. So I mean, I've heard 74, I've heard 76, I've heard 78, I've heard 400, over 400. Yeah. What it was, I think Bob McGuire on Spaced Out Radio said 70 or 80 or something like that. Wow. And so 17. Wow. So that, I mean, and that was told to me today. Wow. But to go back to your question, so that's one of the reasons why I'm holding off is that I'm asking, is there this additional rumored footage? You know,
right.
I mean, again, I think it was on Spaced Out Radio. It's hard to keep track of all the claims, but I think there was like 40 minutes of footage that was talked about. I don't have an answer to that. I don't know if there's any footage at all. But my case will mandate a review of anything that was handed over with the written part. So,
if you had to take a guess, do you think they got some kind of media with it other than just a report?
my guess before it was published was we were going to see the FLIR, the gimbal, the go fast in the public report, because that doesn't reveal anything new, but it gives some eye candy.
Right.
You know, and I often attribute government secrecy to magic and being a magician. And essentially, you make them look in your right hand so your left hand can do whatever the heck it wants, you know, and you don't see what's going on in that other hand. When you give that eye candy, it gives the aura of transparency. But the general public has learned absolutely nothing, right? But they see a report with gimbal and go fast and well, what did we learn? We already know they're unidentified. The videos have been out for years. What? But to the general public, maybe not us and your audience, but to the general public, they will see that and go, wow, we're really learning something, really transparent all of a sudden, you know, go government. Yeah. But in reality, we've learned absolutely nothing. And so there's always that tactic. And again, I had a whole chapter in my book about it, the greatest trick of a magician. And that is what you have to deal with when looking at information like this. And why are all these varying ideas of how lengthy the report is? You know, why are those numbers floating out there?
Right. Where are they coming from?
Where are they coming from? And that to me is kind of more interesting than the report itself at this point, because everybody talks about their anonymous sources. I've got sources. And again, I think it was that Spaced Out Radio interview where, like, it was passion. There was passion there. Why won't people believe me? I have sources. Well, what happened? Like, okay, so if ODNI is lying in this legal case that I have going, which I can buy, I'll buy that. That's fine. Someone's got to come forward, because Luis Elizondo, Danny Sheehan, Bob McGuire, and, like, you know, however many other Twitter randos want to put numbers out there. But everybody can't be right in this particular instance.
Right.
So who is? And if ODNI is telling me 17 pages, what happened? You know, like,
well, can I quell a little bit of the disappointment? Maybe you'll jump on board with me here.
You're not going to undisappoint me, but go ahead. Try.
It's a preliminary report.
That's true.
It is a preliminary report, so I would just say relax, because I know a lot of people. I have a feel. Well, they just found out it's only 17 pages.
Oh, so it's on Reddit now.
Well, yeah. What was the? We got the public got, what was it? 7 pages.
Yeah, 7 plus the index, like
total,
9.
9 total. So that means that the actual report is only 8 pages more. And I'm curious to know if there's like a cover page included, or, you know, like an ending page or something, or an index in the back of that. So really it could only be maybe 5. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, I won't be surprised if the language is 100% identical. And then the blacked out sections are going to be those classified portions. So is that 50%? Is that 40%? 10%? I really don't know. What I'm looking for, though, is to see anything when it comes to dates, locations, anything. And even if it's the deflating balloon visual that they had in, quote, high confidence, whatever that means, if that is in there, I want to see that. You know, is that the Omaha video where there's a sphere slowly descending into the water? Is that what they're referring to? I want to know, because that's when I was talking about the visuals. That's what I expected in that public report, that we were going to see something that we were just being hammered with in the media about these leaks and unidentified this and that. And then they show the Omaha video and say, look, this is a deflating balloon, and here's all the technical data, or here's why, or, you know, here's a 4K other camera that was rolling at the same time, whatever, you know, like whatever it might be. But that's what I wanted to see, or that's what I expected. And truth be told, there was none of that. So what is encompassing of these extra pages? I mean, I don't know. I really don't. But again, the story for me is away from the report, the leaks. Why is it being able to happen? I was getting on the record statements, it's going back a couple months, but was there an investigation trying to figure out who was doing the leaking? Because we know for a fact that the FLIR, Gimbal, and Go Fast videos were investigated by the Air Force Office of Special Investigation. They do essentially the investigations for OSD. So that's why AFOSI was the lead on that. So we know when these UAP video or linked imagery leaks that there is an investigation. So with these new ones, for a while they were saying no. When I asked Susan Gough last, which is probably, I don't know, 5 weeks ago or so, for whatever that newest one came out, I said, okay, I got to beat the dead horse here again and say, you know, there's a sieve going on with this UAP related information, even though you're not saying it's unidentified, that's fine. But there's a sieve. So all these leaks are happening. Are you investigating? And she changed it to, we're not going to comment on that. Wow. So I do, if I were a betting man, which I am, I would bet money that they are investigating it and looking into it, because you do potentially have a security problem here. I mean, I'm a big advocate for transparency, but I also respect secrecy. You know, as much as I don't like to admit that, there are some secrets that should be kept. So I don't think the most recent Jeremy Corbell leak shows any classified information. But my point is that if somebody is able to smuggle out a video or photograph or take a cell phone camera in a Navy vessel where they shouldn't have a cell phone camera, that's an issue. Because, yeah, sure, this video is kind of silly and it's not showing us much. But what happens when there really is something that's classified or sensitive that nobody cares, that this person goes in, takes a cell phone picture or a video, or is just able to put a thumb drive in the pocket and walk out of the Pentagon? That, you know, that kind of stuff doesn't it doesn't fly. I mean, especially post Snowden, you do have concerns here. So I think that they probably are looking into it. I think that there's an investigation, and we'll see what happens.
What do you think it's in this report that is swaying the opinions of senators?
Politicians do what politicians do best, in my opinion, and they love the camera. And I think that one thing we have to take in consideration, not that they aren't impressed by it, but I think that there's a strategy to get yourself not only in front of the camera, but replayed thousands of times on nighttime television news broadcasts. And there's value to that as a politician. So say you're impressed because you just heard about our classified technology, or you just heard about space aliens, or you just heard about, you know, whatever's going on. You don't have to say anything. Just say, this is amazing. Just, we got to push for answers. We got to this, that, and the other thing. What did we learn? Well, nothing. But they seemed passionate and interested, and you add UAPs to that, that's gold. And so they find themselves going viral on Twitter because they said something about UFOs. And we see that. John Ratcliffe answers a question on Fox News, boom, viral within an hour. You know, and what granted, what he said actually was pretty fascinating. But that's kind of an example of what happens when...
So you think that's what's happening with NASA too?
Well, you also have a very interesting aspect to this, that they can't dismiss it anymore. Maybe not because of evidence or the reality of the phenomena, which, trust me, I believe it's real and it needs to be investigated. But with the amount of attention that the general public is now getting to this, with the amount of publicity that the media is giving it, you can't ignore it. So if NASA came out and went, we just really don't care, you know, I mean, it's probably a balloon, you'd have major backlash. What also works in situations like this, if politicians hammer hard enough, is you get money. And NASA is not exactly drowning in money. Now, please don't think that I'm just dismissing this whole thing as a cash grab by the U.S. military and NASA. So show some interest in UAPs and you get drowned in money. I'm not saying that. But we have to look at politicians and how politicians are, or those appointed officials that work for the politicians and that are often in the spotlight, that they have an agenda too. And it may not always be in the interest of truth and so on. It's in the interest of the job that they're there to do. And in regards to NASA, it's to make that agency thrive. And so again, you come out negatively and say, those Navy pilots, they're seeing a 747 bank, and if you're the NASA administrator and you say that and you dismiss Commander Fravor or Alex Dietrich or whomever, and you poo-poo that, you've got a huge problem on your hand. But if you say, we're here to help, we're here to find answers and look at this and so on and so forth, then you're safe in the eyes of the general public. You're not going to get attacked by hashtag UFO Twitter.
And it's going to be potential political gold.
Yeah.
Say again, I'm sorry?
And it could be political gold for you as the politician who's going viral saying, we want to push for answers, Alex. Absolutely. Fravor?
Yeah, those are all votes. And you go back to Hillary Clinton and her campaigns, all of them doing the nighttime shows and really entertaining the UFO question. I'm not saying they were just doing it to pander for votes, but there is value to that. And you get a certain percentage of society that doesn't matter about healthcare, doesn't matter about foreign policy, but if you say you're going to look into UFOs, you got my vote.
You want to hear a mind bender before we go to reset the room. Hey, John, are you good on time? Can you stick around?
I can. Yeah, I'm going to have to get my daughter here.
Okay.
Whenever you got to leave,
yeah, I've got a little more time.
Okay, cool. Well, what I was going to say was just yesterday, Matt Gaetz, right? That's his name, right? The politician?
Gaetz, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Gaetz, he was just in California rallying at a Free Britney Spears event. And I'm thinking to myself,
that's genius.
How? Because he's saying the thing everyone wants to hear, but I know that crowd loathes him, right?
Oh yeah.
But they all clapped and cheered every single. I wanted to be there just to see the confusion on their faces. To like, do I clap? This guy's apparently a child molester. Like, what do I do? What do I do? But because they're so for Britney Spears, they did what they were expected to do, which was clap and woohoo, and it was such a fun little moment, a paradox, where I could just sit there. I felt like George Carlin watching it. I was like, this is
comedy gold.
Just how freaking hilarious this is if you just step back and look at it. So with the reset, we got John Greenewald Jr., who is the man who runs the Black Vault. I put his link to the website in the chat, and so you guys go check out his website, go check out his YouTube channel. The man is the king of FOIA. He's now close to 5 million documents that he's gotten released through the FOIA process. He's a champion in this UAP climb that is uphill. It's always been uphill, always will be uphill, and it's a little bit easier of a climb when John Greenewald is carrying some of that load. So thank you for that. And then, of course, we've got Michael, our host here of the show, the Singularity Lab, the man who brings this show for you guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share the channel. It goes a very, very long way. If you want to support us, remember, we are basically a public access channel. We are supported by people like you. So donate in the super chat. Go to our Patreons. Check us out. There are wonderful tiers for you guys to help support the show. There's no secret access. There's no hidden extra access show when you guys join the Patreon. Everybody gets the same thing because this information, in my opinion, should be put out to the world at the exact same time for everybody to consume it, digest it, and talk about it. It's too important to put behind paywalls. That's just my opinion. Other than that, I think
John has the same opinion. John's the man.
Well, I mean, look, there are some wonderful, and that's not a knock on other folks who do it. I'm just saying, like, if you're hiding secret access or if you got extra information behind your paywall, that's what I'm talking about. But there are some wonderful podcasts out there that have a really good format where their shows are put free. And if you're a Patreon, you might get a couple hours or days of access, but they're doing amazing work. So it's not a knock on everyone out there. It's just that's the way I feel.
Yeah, someone actually asked in the comment section how they could donate without YouTube taking 30%. There's a link to the Patreon in the description.
The Patreon is the absolute best way to support the show. Honestly, it really, really is. So with that out of the way, let's bring in, I guess, our resident friend here, our man, the Rather Be Squidding, who's got his YouTube channel where he explores science and tech with UAPs. And this week it's going to be baby universes, right?
Yeah. So I got an interesting one coming up, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thank you
Thanks,
for being
Rather.
here, Rather. And then we've got Sean Rosh, right?
Rush.
The witness citizen. He's got a wonderful YouTube channel, one of my favorite out there. He's going to be a big part of the Big Phone Home. At least I'm telling him now. And he does an amazing channel. You guys go check him out. He had a killer interview with some very forward questions with Lou Elizondo that had some just really wonderful moments. So go check his channel out. He's new to this, and he's grown a lot here just in the last month. So congratulations on that growth. And he's one of the few, if not the only YouTube channels that calls Congress on a regular basis live for you guys to hear it, and interacts with his representatives and does a lot of work and a lot of FOIA digging himself, and he's becoming a really cool historian in this field. So welcome, Sean Rosh, to the show.
So I have
Thank
another
you very much for having me.
welcome. Thank you so much, Sean. So question, I got another, I know John's got to get out of here in a second. He's got to go pick up his daughter soon. So I have a question for you. Have you heard about this 23-minute video that Sheehan and Elizondo have been talking about? Have you heard anything about this?
Well, I mean, I heard what you did.
Okay.
You know,
Exactly. Yeah.
Look, I'll say a blanket statement because I don't want to seem like I'm picking on anybody, but it's so hard when you hear stories like that and we just don't have any real confirmation. I get a lot of heat because people think, oh, if it doesn't come from the government, it's not real, according to me. And that is not true. And I want to stress that the government is not the end all be all. I've never felt that in 25 years, but I find a lot of value in what you can get from the government because there's an extra layer of, we'll call it officialdom about the whole thing. But when you talk about stories like this, a 24-minute video, 400-page classified reporters at 74 pages or 70 to 80, you know, which is it? We're not really sure. Those types of stories are really tough. I mean, I'm a researcher above all else, and when you make claims, you have to have the information or the evidence to back it up. And when I put forward information, that's what I try and do. I try and bring forward the best and most amount of information I can. I'm not trying to be long-winded to answer your question. I've heard about that video, yes. Am I interested in it? Absolutely. Do I think it exists? I have no idea. You know, I mean, it may exist as much as the 400-page classified report, you know, exists. And I'm not trying to be snarky. I'm just trying to say, like, we really just don't know when we hear stuff like that.
Do you honestly not
it's
believe in
challenging.
Elizondo? Do you think he's not trustworthy, by chance?
I want to refrain from saying he's just not trustworthy. You know, I would tell him the exact same thing, and I have privately, publicly on my show. So I don't want to make it seem like I'm talking around his back. But I question everything. I truly do, and it's not against the person. I feel that a lot of people interpret questioning as disrespect, and I think that, I mean, and present company probably excluded, but there are a lot of people, trust me, that if you go against the company line and you challenge somebody in the form of a question, right? Sure. But you stay respectful, that to many people is disrespectful. And that's what's challenging. So I don't want to say, oh no, Elizondo's not trustworthy, but his own words when he first entered the scene, and I have it kind of tagged on one of my pages where I have a ton of ATIP related material, and it's a quote from him, and he essentially, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he essentially says, question everything, even me. And that's where
says that.
Yeah, exactly. And to his credit, I mean, I truly think he believes that, and I think that is a mantra that he wants all of us to follow. And so that's what I do follow, not only against him, but anybody that comes my way. Even outside of the UFO world, I get letters and people and claims all the time in my mailbox, on my toll-free line. You know, people come in all the time with stories, and stories are great, but you need the evidence to back it up. So is that 23-minute video real? I hope so. That'd be awesome to see. But I think that, and I'll close the question this way. I have a couple more minutes, so I'm not trying to say goodbye, but just closing the question for you, or with the answer, is that you you have to think about what would truly be classified in the eyes of the United States government and the United States military. And then you have to couple that with the claims that we hear. And if they're talking about classified information and the existence of classified information, that is potentially problematic. And when there is nothing that stops them from doing that, is it as important as we are led to believe? And these are all questions that sometimes may make people cringe, but we have to realize that this isn't always what it seems. Is this 23-minute video really there? I don't know. But if it is, and it showed something extraordinary that would change the course of
Apparently, I'd
humanity
need a
as we know
diaper.
it.
So
Say again?
apparently, I will need a diaper. That's what he said. So
Which is, great. I've got a 2-year-old still in him. I will cram in one of those things if that's what it takes.
if you don't mind, John, I've never had any time with you, so I just got one question for you.
Sure.
Do you think it serves people well to go and, research history again, like back in the 50s? Do you think there's still things to find back there?
Back in the 1950s, still stuff to find?
50s, all that, 60s. Because I feel like I'm finding a lot that people don't talk about much. So.
Sure. I think that the UFO community, and this is not meant to be an insult, but because I'm in the same boat, in the same category, we're very forgetful. So a lot of times you'll hear about something and man, it's like gets 12,000 likes and shares and everybody digs it. But like 6 months later, we don't hear about it anymore. Yeah. And I think that's true with a lot of these older cases. Sure. Especially in the last couple of years. I think a lot of people that have entered the scene post-2017, that they really think it's all about 2004, Nimitz, Gimbal, Navy,
That's
pilots.
That's least fun to me for some reason.
Well, I think people forget that there's a huge history behind all of this, and there's a lot of fascinating cases that defy explanation. One of my personal favorites is the 1976 Iran incident. It's what got me into this field. But there's no explanation for a lot of these documents, and a lot of them are lost in time. So if you look at some of my recent posts in the last month or two, I just kind of randomly pull documents and profile like a page or two. Sure. And sometimes do a video about it or
That's
a
what
post.
I've been doing. That's funny.
But yeah, it's a great tactic because it reminds people that ufology did not start in 2017. UFO encounters did not start in 2004. This is something that has gone on for decades and decades, and arguably some of the more interesting stuff happened way back then.
And this is what boggles my mind. You think about, oh, sorry, John. I was just going to say real quick, this is kind of what boggles my mind because you have, what reignited my passion for this topic was absolutely when I listened to David Fravor on Joe Rogan's podcast. Like I was blown away. I was like, oh my God, like something's going on. Like I've always had passion. I had a sighting when I was 11. And so it kind of reignited it. And then you go back and look at some of these older cases where they're talking about, we didn't have the Tic Tac vernacular in 1947, but we talked about fuselages, we talked about cigar shapes, we talked about, all these different shapes that are similar to a Tic Tac. I guess what's so interesting to me is that in 1947, like it's one thing to say, sure, maybe this is the U.S. government experimenting on our own. In 2017, we're developing this highly advanced, the military industrial complex is 30 years ahead of private industry, blah, 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 right? 1947, anti-gravity in 1947, China couldn't do that. Russia couldn't do that. We couldn't do that. What do you make of ufology over the years and how we're seeing similar sightings and a resurgence now?
Well, that's one of the things I love about those older cases is that, and I'm not trying to plug the book, but that was one thing I did for my book that I had never done before and really sat down, looked at the documentation, looked at the cases, looked at the ones that were the better ones, the radar confirmed, visual observation, stuff like that, of certain airspeeds, even approximations. And I would juxtapose that with where we were as humanity with aircraft and how fast we can go. And there was one document that I just profiled not too long ago, where essentially the airspeed that was chronicled within this document wasn't broken for 50 years by human technology. And even after all this time, we still don't have an attributable craft that may have been classified in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and classified in the 80s and classified in the 90s And maybe then in the 2000s they tell us no, that hasn't been the case. And my point is that even after all these decades, all this stuff is still unexplained, and it surpasses where we are at. Now, the CIA is a prime example of trying to attribute our technology to UFO sightings from decades ago. And a couple years back, they did a tweet that was essentially like, hey, remember all those UFO sightings in the 1950s? That was us. And they tried to blame the U2. Mm-hmm. I don't think they banked on geeks like me going and fact-checking that. Right. And so I immediately filed a FOIA on the research and what they did to prove that. And then you start looking at the U2 flights. And the U2 flights didn't start until the mid-1950s. So you immediately have half of a decade that is not attributed to anything with the U2. Right. And then when you look at the actual flights and where they were and so on and so forth, they had nothing to do with any of the cases of note in the 1950s. So in essence, it was all like a ridiculous claim. So I did that FOIA request to the CIA, and I said, okay, give me everything that you guys generated for the creation of this tweet. And yes, there's a lot of information that goes in. When the CIA puts their name on something, there are drafts of things, there's research, there's reports, there's this, that, and the other thing. And what I came back with, and I've posted the documents so you can see them, but it was an email thread. The names were redacted, which is common, but an email thread that essentially, like, one guy said, hey, what if we do this? Put the tweet. And the other guy went, all right, sounds good. That was literally it. That was all the research that went into it.
Wow.
And that was the CIA's tweet. And so they blasted the thing out there, and, you know, it was hugely successful in the sense that everybody, you know, liked and retweeted it and so on and so forth. But to the general public who doesn't fact check, they may read that on the surface and go, oh, yeah, well, that makes sense. We were testing the U2 back then. So sure, yeah, a lot of people saw that. But when you fact check and when you actually look into it, it doesn't match up. So that's why I love those older cases, because you don't have the internet as something to cloud the to muddy the water, so to speak, and to cloud the air. You don't have all of that motivation to create a flashy headline, so to speak, and get viral viewership out of it. Rather, a lot of these older documents that didn't see the light of day for decades, that are displaying technology that we can't even explain, a lot of which you can prove were not part of Project Blue Book, that entire era was a lie, and that has evidence to prove it. You know, you just pile on the evidence over and over and over. And we can't dismiss it just because it's 1960s or 70s, and to some people they're like, that's kind of snoozy. On the opposite, that drills home the importance of what is going on today, using evidence from back then. And that evidence, in my opinion, is arguably more fascinating than what's going on today.
John,
I have too many
go for it.
I have way too many questions, so you're just going to have to come on my show.
Go ahead, hijack the interview, Sean. Go on.
Just come on my show. I'll do it then. But go ahead. Have you ever looked into the Aerial Phenomenon Office and what the Foreign Technology Division did with all this stuff?
So, yeah, I think you're going back to the Project Blue Book era, right?
Right. Yeah, somewhat. Yeah, 60s, yeah.
So
I found some documents where they're just purely on it, but I also noticed that ATIC was actually, like, Grudge, Blue Book, all that ran through ATIC. So I'm finding all this different stuff, and I'm trying to trail where everything went to, currently. I basically got to NAISC, I think, but I'm not sure.
By the way, John,
Sean
is like your protege. He's like, this guy is really is getting into this process, into the early, I think, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, but he's really diving into this FOIA world and these really old documents, and I think he's doing fantastic work. And honestly, I think it would be a wonderful conversation between the two of you, because I could just see you being a mentor to this guy, because we need, like we had a conversation a few weeks ago, we need 15 John Greenewalds, and the more John Greenewalds we could inspire. No, the more John Greenewalds we can inspire. Yeah, right. The better. So yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt the question or the flow, but I just thought that was important.
It's all good. And my compliments to Sean, because it sounds like he's doing awesome, the way he's going. So if I can help, by all means. But here's a quick story that I think you might appreciate. when it comes to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and part of this you may know, but this was my experience hitting them with a FOIA over 20 years ago, 24 years ago now, in that we know that Project Sign, Project Grudge, and then led to Project Blue Book existed. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base was the home.
Yeah.
Sign and Grudge was ultimately a very more unstructured effort. It was more fragmented to where
Twinkle.
then as they progressed, they realized, okay, we need to really formalize this. We need to make it transparent. In essence, the general media actually had access to some of the Blue Book files. They just had to make a phone call, could go in and actually see the cases. So there was transparency there. But in those original days, and even through Project Blue Book, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and ATIC and all that they were all part of that effort.
OSI,
So,
I found a lot too.
right, yeah, and I'm so sorry. I don't mean to keep saying what. It's hard for me to
No, that's
hear
okay.
your...
I talk kind of quiet sometimes.
Oh, no, it's all
I
good.
find like OSI did a lot of the investigations, like with the witnesses and everything, military witnesses. I actually found like 60 to 80 DC sighting documents where they're talking to a bunch of different people about the radar sightings, commercial pilots, all that stuff, how fast they're going. And I found that by, first it started with your Leon Davidson document, and that's where I saw ATIC. So then I took ATIC and went to CIA.
Yeah.
and I started finding a bunch of stuff, and that led me, just down a rabbit hole, of course. But
Yeah, well, this is a rabbit hole full of rabbit holes, let me tell you. And when I did the FOIA request to write Pat, the standard answer that they maintain today is that everything from that era was transferred to the National Archives literally decades ago. So they had denied my request as a no records, but they recommended that I go to the archives and they give you a fact sheet.
Yeah.
And there's not really a fact on the fact sheet, but whatever, that's a different show. And so I took them at their word. I was young and stupid, and I thought that they were telling me the truth.
Yeah.
So fast forward a couple years, and I read this small blurb of an article in UFO magazine. And I had known Bill Burns at that time and have known him for many, many years. Gave him a call, and we kind of figured out what was going on. But there was this blurb that Wright-Patterson Air Force Base had released about 1,000 pages on UFOs, including Project Sign, Project Grudge, and they had mentioned Project Blue Book, but there were just Sign and Grudge documents. My whole point, though, is that I got that no records response, that they had looked for the records, found nothing, it was all transferred to the National Archives. Going back to your question about is there stuff that we haven't seen or is there more to discover, this is a prime example that the answer is yes. That for so many years and arguably decades, people took the United States Air Force at their word that this material was transferred over to the archives. It encompassed, I forget how many pages, but there are literally tens and tens of thousands of pages on Project Blue Book. But here were 1,000 pages from the 1940s and 50s that were not transferred over, that all of that was not accurate at all. And so I often cite that story because how many times could this potentially have happened during these years of investigating UFOs? And when you were saying that OSI did some of the investigations, Blue Book was sorely understaffed. And so what they were doing was they were literally reaching out to other offices, agencies, military branches, and whomever was, let's say, in the vicinity of a sighting to go out there and take a report. And what was really interesting, I mentioned it earlier in the show before you got on, Sean, but there's this really awesome story about Project Blue Book and how a researcher had essentially saw an ad on Craigslist for UFO documents. And to very quickly summarize the story, this guy who used to work on Project Blue Book saved boxes of Blue Book material. And shoved it into his garage, sold his house, only took half of the stuff with him, forgot about some boxes that were under lumber. The new homeowner saw it, went, maybe I can get a couple bucks on Craigslist. And a researcher, a friend of mine by the name of Rob Mercer, saw it, purchased it, tracked down the previous homeowner, and we've digitized the entire collection. It's all online.
Wow.
But the point of this is that the majority of those documents, and there are hundreds and hundreds of case files, are not in the official Project Blue Book case files.
Wow.
Meaning they were lost to the shredders, they were ignored, whatever, fill in the blank. But and these were genuine. There was no doubt about it. I shouldn't say we. Rob had seen the guy's military records, pictures with him and Hector Quintanilla. I mean, the guy was there. It checked out across the board. There's no doubt about it for any of this material. But the whole point is that there was this quite a few case files where they would call an investigator, and I believe it was in Florida, one of the Air Force bases in Florida. And this guy, he really did not care about UFOs or investigation. And he essentially, in his reports, were calling the airmen, enlisted U.S. Air Force airmen, pretty much idiots, stupid, and I think he used idiots, stupid, wasting time, this and that. That was the caliber of their investigators that they would just toss an investigation to. So it was very revealing in these documents on, number one, how much we're missing, because this was not part of the bigger picture, how much Project Blue Book was a joke, and going back to the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base discovery, how much of that information is lost in these nooks and crannies at these archives, at these Air Force bases, government agencies, and so on. How much is just sitting there, but the FOIA officers don't know about it. They're lazy. They don't care. Again, fill in the blank. And we're missing out. So that is the very long-winded way of saying, yes, there's a lot more to be discovered, and it's just ripe for the picking, I guess.
Wow. Yeah. John, let me ask you this. You've got a big article coming tomorrow. Is there anything else you kind of want to amp up or tease us out about this article?
Well, I mean, we kind of just squeezed one out of there today, didn't we, John?
No, to be honest with you, because I did feel bad. I didn't want to think that I was anybody to think I was being secretive. So it was a slip. But to be honest with you, I did want to pretty much bring up the page count. But with Michael's question about the videos, that was great, and that really did, lean into why I was holding off, because I wanted to either confirm that rumor or label it a myth. So that being said, so more detail about that will be tomorrow, and then about the case and just kind of telling the public like this is it. I've done some live streams on it, so it's not like breaking news or anything, but rather just putting it in written form with putting the 17 pages into context, and that we're envisioning that the classified report is this, but in reality it's much smaller, and that's we got to again kind of check our expectations. But the other one is updating the Luis Elizondo email destruction story. And again, I'm not a big teaser. I don't want it to seem like, man, you're going to need a diaper tomorrow was the expression.
That was my stupid question that I
don't do that. But the reason why I did post it out was to essentially put a timeline for myself. So I lock myself into it. So part of those types of tweets when I do them are for me, because that way I won't go out of it. A lot of times I'll delay. Oh, well, what if the Pentagon gets back to me Monday, and then it's like 2025. I'm like, what about Tuesday? Getting older as we go. So a lot of it is for me setting a timetable, but also, this story needs to be updated. I do have updated language from the stance of the Department of Defense. I will say that there is still absolutely zero proof of authority that allowed them to destroy the records. Wow. I have spent an untold amount, an ungodly amount of, I'm embarrassed to even say
3 years.
How much that I have gone through. Yeah, it's been a couple of years of FOIA cases.
Sheehan's got a loud mouth, man. I got to tell you. He is saying all sorts of stuff.
Well, Sheehan, yeah.
There's a lot of stuff being said by a lot of people, and that's, in the grander scheme of things, that's where things get frustrating, because trying to sift through all of those types of claims and were things said literally or metaphorically, that makes it really challenging. So again, going back to what I said about the government not being the end-all be-all, at least there's a somewhat of an official stamp when you go through this. And trying to get Luis Elizondo's emails, it doesn't matter if you believe him or not, the truth will be there if they were able to release those emails, and they were all destroyed. So that to me was a fascinating aspect to all of this, no matter what side of the fence you sit on with him. But then now add in the fact that I'm, let me see, it took 2 months to get 2 months of waiting for me to publish that article. So it was a couple years, like more than 2 years of FOIA cases. There were at least 8 that I have. I think there's a couple more, but regardless, I could prove 8, so I said 8. So 8 connected FOIA cases over the course of 2 years, all going into Luis Elizondo's emails. Multiple appeals that I won. So I put up a good case where the appellate authority within the DOD said, yep, Greenwald deserves to have these remanded. So they were all remanded back. And then the case that really was the one that set all this off was a search for Luis Elizondo's emails for the word unidentified. And I asked for the entire career that Elizondo was in. And they gave me a no records. They said not a single record existed. Now, they didn't tell me the records were destroyed. And in fact, there were numerous communications, and I can prove a paper trail like you wouldn't believe. But the point here is that they never told me that the stuff was deleted. And think about in the last 10 years, have you said the word unidentified in an email, but not referencing a UFO? And the answer is probably yes. You went to KFC and there was some unidentified substance, in your mashed potatoes, something, that you're telling your buddy about.
Right.
So the likelihood of that having a no records was nil. And so that set me off. I'm like, okay, there's something weird here. I'm winning these appeals, but they're still coming back, no records. That doesn't make sense. That started a 2-month journey of then them resending the letter, adding the language that there was no mailbox, and then a lot of more time and follow-ups into the double digits of begging for answers, saying, I need to know what you're saying here. Are you saying that the records are destroyed? I finally got that confirmation. That's when I published. That's the article you guys have read. That's what started the firestorm. And now we're at about 6 weeks later. A week after I published that article, I got additional language. I got another one. Now, why haven't I published that yet? It's because I wanted to make sure what I believed to be true was still right. And I have dug in more records retention schedules throughout multiple agencies trying to disprove myself. And the only thing it has done is reinforced the case with this now new approved language, new from 5 weeks ago. It's reinforced the fact that they had no authority, that no one can tell me why this happened, and the information that they've given me, they are passing the blame. And that's where I'll end it. Essentially, I'm still waiting. I gave them a final answer, and I will be publishing my final attempt. I will publish how many times I've followed up, which is outrageous that anybody should have to do this. I mean, they could tell me to go fly a kite off of a bridge somewhere, and that's fine. I would stop. That's it. But to be ignored through constant asking of, hey, I want to be accurate here. So my final attempt was, this is what I'm running with. And if you guys have anything to say, now's the time, because this has now turned into more than a 3-month journey. Just getting language, that's just the 3 months. That doesn't count the years of FOIA cases, the writing of appeals, the winning of appeals. Imagine how much money that the lawyers spent reviewing my cases when I submitted those appeals. They're not cheap. And so all of that time is wasted. And it was a complete waste of time, money, resources, government money. I'm an advocate for that too, about looking at wasteful spending. If they would have told me from the get-go 2 years ago when these no records started flowing in, then we would have a different conversation right now. But instead, they sloughed me off for 2 years, giving me essentially, dare I say, fabricated answers. That they did a search and found nothing. But how can you search something that doesn't exist? So they had ample opportunity. And one piece of evidence that I did publish was asking them if they had searched NIPRNet, SIPRNet, and JWIX. And for those who don't know what that is, essentially if you have a government system, government email, you communicate at either an unclassified level or secret or top secret. So essentially, those are the 3 different systems: unclassified, secret, JWIX being the top is top secret. And so that's how they transfer classified information. So if you don't stipulate that you want all 3 systems searched, they likely won't do it. So I confirmed in one of these requests,
good to know.
Did you search NIPR, SIPR, and JWIX? And they said yes. Now, yet again, that is an example of they had an opportunity to tell me, hey, by the way, there is no email box to search.
Wow.
So if my request is saying, please search this email box, they're confirming after the fact, yeah, we searched those other networks, the email box doesn't have anything, and yet the email box doesn't exist. What's going on there? And so that was my last ditch effort now with this approved language. I believe that the entire explanation, which again, publishing tomorrow, which will make more sense, but that entire explanation would not apply, and I believe I have the proof of it. So that's what I'm rolling with. So I gave him. I said I'm publishing Friday. Here it is. This is how I've interpreted this. This is your approved language. I'm begging you to add something. Again, the amount of follow-ups I've done is embarrassing. There are confirmations that they were working on it, but that's as far as I would get, and then you'd get ignored for like 7, 8 more follow-ups, and that's frustrating, especially with a very sensitive topic like this. And I don't mean to take over the show, so
it's okay.
It's your show, brother.
Yeah. Well, here's actually something. I don't know, John. Have you tried this? Can you FOIA Lou Elizondo's emails with the word "the"?
I was just thinking that, or
or "and."
Yeah. So I will say this, and I'm this will also be in the article, but to tell you guys, it's not newsworthy, but a lot of people have brought this up, and it's a great point.
Yeah.
In my original article where I broke the story, in like the very end, I said that prior to publishing, I had filed numerous cases to, in essence, still access his emails, even though the mailbox was destroyed. And so now I'm elaborating on that a little. I didn't at the time, just simply because there's absolutely nothing to report. Even though now there's still absolutely nothing to report. To expand on it very briefly is that even though Luis Elizondo's email box, right, is destroyed and gone, he still sent unknown amount of emails to the unknown amount of people, right? And those unknown amount of people, what if their email boxes are still there? What if their records retention allows their email boxes to still be there? So what I did prior to publishing was figure out a list of people that Luis Elizondo would likely be dealing with, and filed FOIA requests on all those other people with their communications and reversed it. So even though I lost all the cases where I said Luis Elizondo's email boxes that contain whatever, I now filed FOIA requests for all those people and said, I want all emails from that guy's mailbox or that girl's mailbox that are from Luis Elizondo. Because even though his email box is gone, doesn't matter. They're still there.
Right.
And so that's what I've done. And have figured out some very interesting names to go after that were probably connected to him and so on. But that doesn't mean that all of his emails are still there. What that essentially locks you in is that the employee still has to be there, and the records retention has to maintain their email boxes. So it's a whole new game with all of that. But what you are going to lose is the outside people that are outside of DoD. And they call it the Defense Enterprise Email, DEE, which is their defense, DoD defense email. But when you're talking about government contractors, let's say like Bigelow Aerospace or all that, they're not being, you can't FOIA either Bigelow or Hal Puthoff or whomever consultant that Luis Elizondo may have been dealing with. Right. So you have lost still an exceptional amount of information, an untold amount of information. One thing I was also able to prove, and I'll throw it out there really quick, remove the UFOs from the conversation for a moment. And this has fascinated me about Luis Elizondo for many years, even prior to me ever meeting him, was his office on his resignation letter. The National Program Special Management Staff, of which he was the director of. None of that has ever been in dispute. And I have dug up a Navy court transcript, one of the only mentions, in fact, actually up until about a week ago. Not sure if I'm going to publish that tomorrow, but up until about a week ago is the only mention of Luis Elizondo's office, NPSMS. And what essentially it was that he was a SAP access person. And why it was in this court transcript was that Luis Elizondo in his office would orchestrate getting SAP access to those who needed SAP access. And in this particular court transcript, it was the transcript for the trial of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the 9/11 mastermind.
Right.
And in this, it stipulated that the attorney and the translator needed the access to essentially properly defend KSM. And that one of them lost their SAP access, which is why they were making mention of the NPSMS. Now, why is all that important? And it's because it's in a legal lawsuit that is still ongoing. And the documentation that I dug up that proved that, in addition to the records retention schedule, what is the likelihood that DOD would not care if somebody who is involved in the trial of KSM and giving access to the translator and or the attorney for KSM, what's the likelihood they would not consider that not historically significant and just say, yeah, delete it, who cares? No, the likelihood of that is nil. And the trial is still ongoing, and it's making headlines like pretty much as we speak. I think there was like a headline about KSM's trial a week or two ago. So all of that being said, take UFOs out of the equation. Elizondo's email box should be maintained, what I can prove, 100% prove, 7 years. So that's 2024. What is arguable, but I think there's an incredibly strong case, indefinitely. So they should never have gotten rid of his files whatsoever.
Right.
But I can comfortably say 2024 should have been the cutoff. And so going back to that article tomorrow, I will have evidence and documents and all sorts of good stuff.
That's fantastic.
And are you going to be doing a show breaking down all these, obviously, right?
Yeah, I will. Kids included, in that equation. But yeah, I will definitely do that and likely do it probably in the morning or afternoon.
Right on.
I've got an interview with Max at 9.
Moskovich?
Moskovich.
Yeah, so doing that in
Max.
the morning. But other than that, I mean, I should have these articles dropped and published by then. And
you're on the hot seat. So will you do my show?
Of course.
All right.
You're on the hot seat.
I got it on record.
Yeah, no, of course. And it's recorded, it's live, I can't
check
back
the
out.
tape.
Yeah, no, of course, I would be happy to. Wild card being my kids, which, by the way, I would love to hang out with you guys, but I do have to go get my daughter. My son, I'm surprised, hasn't come through the door here.
Dad!
Yeah, he's playing with the dog. I can hear him in the hallway running back and forth. So.
John, you've been absolutely amazing with your time. Thank you so much. I know you only promised us an hour, but to get you for an hour 48 has been magnificent. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming on the show. Can you tell people exactly where to find you, how to stay in touch? I really would love for people to be able to check out this release tomorrow that you got coming.
Sure, yeah. The best way, is theblackvault.com will link you to everything. So that will give you my Twitter. I'm most active on Twitter just simply because a lot more information goes out there, but also Facebook and so on. So Twitter, though, I'll be dropping those articles tomorrow. And then theblackvault.com is where you can access everything.
Right on.
Amazing. Thank you so much, John. We really appreciate your time. Do follow John. His Twitter is in the description below. So if you click that, I think that links directly to his website as well.
And also our moderator, Tima Tamakazuski, also put his link to the Black Vault as well in the chat. Check it out.
Awesome. I really appreciate that, guys. I'm sorry I totally hang out with you longer.
Oh, John,
Daddy duty's taking over.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Do your thing, man.
No worries.
We love any time we could get any of your time because we know you're a busy man, so we appreciate it.
I appreciate that. And Sean, the offer's open, so
awesome.
Drop me a line and we'll set it up. No problem. All right, guys.
Awesome.
Thanks again. You guys have a great
Sean.
rest of your show.
Thanks, brother. Have a great one. All right, Sean, it's your show, bro. We'll go on.
Go for it. It's Witness Citizen. Who are you calling? Who are you calling right now?
There was this one guy that wanted me to call. He said he was with the government, but when I looked at him, he had holes in his sweatpants, so I'm just not buying it.
Somebody earlier said that they thought you were a pre-recorded evil version of me.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys kind of do.
Of you?
You guys kind
middle
of
name's Michael.
a little bit look like evil twins. A little. Yeah, a little bit.
He's my Wario.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know what? This should be something. This should be our goodbye line every time Greenewald's on the show.
Somebody
Go FOIA
asked me if I
yourself.
actually do take notes. I don't know.
FOIA yourself.
Yeah. Hold on, wait. Let's wait.
I was just saying, like, somebody was like, "Do you actually take notes, Michael, or do you?"
We
just
can't see; it's
doodle?
all blown out.
It looks like you don't.
It looks like you don't. Oh, yeah, there they are. Yeah, there they are. A little bit. Yeah.
Sean interrupted 3 times. Check. I'm just kidding.
Well, how about this?
Future panelists.
Send 2,500 troops to Colombia. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We didn't hear anything from Rather. He couldn't get a word in edgewise over Sean Rock.
I do have something interesting. I think.
Hey,
I think I have
wait,
the
hold
math
on.
on the.
I have something to say.
All right.
That was
Don't
perfect.
worry.
That
I
was
muted him.
perfect.
I muted him.
No, that was perfect. What's the name of that attorney again, rather?
Wait, I wanted to say something here. All right.
Real quick, Rather, before you do that, before you share this amazing piece of information that you're about to share, I just want to remind everybody, make sure you click the subscribe button below, click the bell so you know whenever we go live. We go live 5 days a week. We talk about breaking science, breaking technology, the potential upcoming technological singularity, AI, robotics, UAP, all that here on the Singularity Lab. And Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we go live every single day on the Unidentified Celebrity Review. So if you haven't subscribed to UCR, make sure you click the link below. Also, don't forget to follow Rather Be Squidding if you like breaking tech, fringe science with a spoonful of skepticism, and Sean Rash with Witness Citizen, who's starting to blow up a little bit. I'm proud of you, buddy. You're doing great.
I'm blowing up. Well, Lou did that for me, so I appreciate it. I'm still going to keep going. Hopefully people will, no, things are going really well. It was kind of a climax to that. We had Bassett, and we just had a great week.
It's killer week.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then I know Lou was busy, but he was able to fit that in, and it was my one shot. So I was like, hey, have you ever killed someone?
Yeah. No, it was
Did
a
you ask him
killer.
that? Oh, yeah.
He did. Yeah, it was a
What did he
killer
answer?
question.
You mentioned that. What did he answer? What was his answer?
It's a loaded answer. Let's let
right.
you know what? Let's let Rather talk. And I was going to say that's a great reason for people to go check out your channel. Like go listen to that response because we can't wrap that response up in 30 seconds. It's just there's a lot of nuance
But I
and,
did have
and
something
things going
I
on
wanted
there.
to touch on before you got to Rather.
Too bad.
What do you got, Rather?
All right. I've been waiting 45 minutes to say this. I think I have the math on the this discrepancy between what Greenewald just told us and what Sheehan told us is.
Oh, please share.
So the UAP task force tells us that in 18 incidents described in 21 reports, observers reported unusual UAP movements or patterns. So if there's the UAP, kind of the broader document to 17 pages, and then we have 18 other reports about these, 21 other reports about these 18 incidences, and each of those 21 reports were about 18 pages long.
That's about 400
adds up to
pages?
400
Right.
pages.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to ask John if he had requested these 18 or 21 reports, but I think I know the answer.
Okay.
I think he did.
For sure, yes.
Yeah, that would have been interesting to bring up to him if Sean wasn't talking so much. But I think I'm just kidding, Sean. But I do think
I
that
missed
that's
it
something
anyway.
you should ask him when you have him on your show, Sean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will. I mean, I find that
That's a
the
great
tough
catch,
part
Rather.
about this is there's people on both sides, like Sheehan, Greenwald, and some other people who just toss out information that's conflicting all the time, and it's like left to us to sift through it and pick which one is correct, and if we don't, we're damned.
Yeah,
You
yeah, and
know,
also,
so-
did you notice that, before the UAP task force, everyone was reporting on how many incidents were going to be covered by the report. I
Yeah.
don't think anyone got that right.
No.
Yeah. No.
So that's the tough part, but it's up to us to stay grounded, right, and see through
Right.
it.
And see
Because
the
No,
there's
it's
truth.
going to
true.
be
Well,
truth
I
on
was-
both parts. You know?
See, I was wondering rather, could Sheehan be referring to the IG investigation? Could he be? I mean, could an
That seems like
investigation like
such
that
a
provide
different realm
400
of
pages?
things, but-
Yeah, no, I don't. I'm just trying to think of maybe he conflicted that report or that paper with this, and he just threw the number out there. But I do love, what you just laid out, rather, and that's a very great question, and it's very rational to see how Sheehan came up with that number if that's how he came to it.
And that's
but
what
then
I'm
again,
almost more interested in than the
Yeah.
classified report is these 21 reports about these bizarre 18 incidents.
well, I'm working on getting Sheehan on the show.
Yeah.
So
that would be
maybe we
amazing.
could just ask him.
Yeah.
Because I think we need to have a 2-hour discussion with Sheehan where he gets some questions back at him. Because the Jimmy Church interview was phenomenal, but I just wanted some follow-up questions to some of the things he was saying. I mean, he just let him fly. I mean, it was like Jimmy Church was like, "Here's the freeway. I shut everything down for you. No one's allowed on it, and you're allowed to go as fast as you want for the next hour and 15, 20 minutes." And the dude did not. He did not take the pedal off the metal. I found that interview for the first half of it. I was like, "Oh my God, I get it. I see the attorney now. I see the legal argument that this man is providing, and it's pretty damn sharp. The way he's going after this, and then the second half of the interview just goes into I don't want to call it crazy town. I don't want to call it woo woo land, but it goes into a place that if you're not very familiar with this topic, you might check out real quick. Because it's, again, these concepts that are insanely hard to grasp.
Yeah,
We're putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
Like, if we're not all on the same page that this phenomena is real, if everybody's on different pages from that fact, to go to that level, it's just... It's going to be so difficult for people to take it seriously.
Well, it's
not
wild
that it's
that the
not
fact-
incorrect. It could be right. Maybe he's right on the money. But it's just a very hard concept for even me to swallow right now.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, the bottom line is we just don't know. We don't have the
Right.
information or the data, so we need to gather more data. And I get your point. If you're out there and you're representing Lou Elizondo, and this is what I don't get about Sheehan. He's a constitutional lawyer representing Lou Elizondo. Why is he out there talking about all of this stuff? Like, and maybe, again, Lou, maybe he's right. I don't know. But what I do know is he's a constitutional lawyer defending Lou Elizondo, trying to ensure that the Pentagon is held accountable for deleting Lou's entire career at the Pentagon.
And his argument on that is sound.
Right.
It's legally sound.
And that's
it's
why
everything past that.
Yeah, and he does say, he kind of says, well, I doubt they deleted his records, and if they did, we can provide them extras. So that's interesting. And he also said Lou is, now, hopefully I didn't get the context wrong, but I'm pretty sure I heard him say Lou is helping these guys with the report.
With the report?
Yeah.
With the UAPTF report or with the IG?
The UAPTF report.
Interesting.
Wait, Lou Elizondo was helping the UAPTF with the
Unless
report?
I got, it's so crazy that I'm going to preface it with unless.
Yeah,
I got
let's
the
go back.
context
Let's somebody
wrong,
go back
but
and find that out because that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And this is the thing about the UFO Twitter echo chamber too, is that you get a bunch of show hosts on together talking about things that they heard or thought they heard or think they heard, and then all of a sudden people walk away going, "Oh yeah, this happened, that happened, this happened," and it's like, wait a second, we just fucked it up for everybody.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So we got to hold ourselves to a higher standard too when it comes to this stuff. I mean, I don't have a journalism degree, but I do want to do my very best to represent the facts as best as I can, and I think we can all do a good, we can all improve in our ability of not being part of the echo chamber, but trying to bring all of these different voices and data points forward. I think that's important, and I think we should continually be flogging ourselves and each other to push for that.
As your evil brother, I would have to say
It's Wario.
incorrect, sir. We should speculate all the time. No,
Yeah, it's total opposite.
no, but that's where go back and listen to it. We should, go over notes from that because I'm not going to say anything more.
Right.
But
No. Well,
you should listen
I
again,
will back you up on this, Sean. There's a couple people in the chat that's saying, yeah, he's right. Sean's right. He got it right. Okay. But it was so difficult to keep up with everything that he was saying. Completely. It was coming out so fast, so furious. I never seen Danny Sheehan go like that. And I was like, wow, this guy's a well-oiled machine. And then we got to 5th and 6th gear. I'm like, oh, my God, what's happening? Why are we losing speed? What's going on?
Breaking news for you. I just remembered. Somebody bought the observation deck, and it is Daniel Sheehan's Mark Sims. And you'll notice Sheehan's talking about his stuff, like the witness diplomacy thing in there.
Yeah.
And I believe that's probably where it's going to be, since Mark, his partner or friend, bought it.
Interesting. So what do you think that
Really?
means?
I think they're going to have.
Can you
their-
speculate on that,
their
Sean?
thing there.
Yeah.
The speculation is that what Sheehan was talking about, what they want to do and bring people in and all that, is going to be an observation deck, because that
Yeah.
part isn't speculation; it was sold.
Interesting. Has anyone been? Have you guys been to the observation deck? I haven't.
I tried to download the software because I got an invite for the free weekend, and my computer just wasn't having it. I mean, maybe because I'm on a Mac. I don't know. I genuinely tried because they gave me the free weekend to go check it out, and I think it was like a thing that they did for everyone. But yeah, I couldn't.
You're an observation deck.
That's fair.
Sorry,
That's
I like
fair.
it. That's a good one.
That's fair. I'll take that. I am an observation dick. Yeah,
You
fair
could have
enough.
been talking to me.
Fair enough. Oh man. But I mean, it's a cool idea.
Yes.
I don't think it's there yet. I mean, VR, like eventually it'll be cool because you'll have VR capabilities. But right now it just looks like you're just like sitting there like watching a TV within a TV screen. Like it's just doesn't.
It's well, hey man, you got to start somewhere, right? Like I mean,
sure.
this whole pandemic threw everybody for a loop. So people are trying to innovate and try to come up with new things for people to connect and it be more of an intimate setting because we can't see each other in person, right? And they're trying to provide that in-person experience without having to leave your house. So I mean, hats off for trying. I just don't.
That's off.
Not for me. Yeah, and I'm sure. Look, I'm sure there'll be other versions and iterations of it that will be awesome and that'll work really well. But
In the future.
In the future.
Okay.
We just get Ken. Let's ask Ken Bai. Ken Bai, when is the observation deck going to look really cool?
Rather, you're being asked to scratch your ear, I believe. In the chats.
Yeah.
Jack is very intense. Unfortunately, we don't have Daniel Miller here today for Jack to off with. Rather is the next best thing. We are approaching our 2 hours here for the Singularity Lab today, so we're going to be wrapping up. But I just want to thank everybody. I want to thank you guys on the panel for being here today. It's been a fantastic show. Lou, you had just such an amazing interview today with Lou Elizondo, your dad, his dad, talking about Cuba. And I just thought that was so cool. So if you guys haven't seen that, make sure you pop over to the Unidentified Celebrity Review after this, because that was a neat conversation. You want to recap that, Lou?
The end of that conversation, amazing.
You guys kiss?
Yeah, we made out. It was really cool. It was really, really cool. I made out with 4 Lou's making out in one room. It was weird. It was weird, but it was cool.
It was cool.
Yeah, it was weird. Cool. It was one of those things where it's like a car accident where you don't want to look at it, but you can't take your eyes off it. One of those things. No, but it was a killer conversation. I mean, we had Lou Elizondo's dad. They showed up in guayaberas and Cuban cigars and cafecitos and hats, and that's why I got my gold chain in my hat going on. We had a great time, man. It was just a wonderful insight into how Lou's family got here, what they struggled through to get here, the Bay of Pigs, Miami, Cuban food. But then we asked Lou's dad about Lou's mission on as far as what he's doing, and it, I think, is one of the best moments I've ever seen with as far as this story is concerned, because listening to Lou talk, right, we've all heard it, we've all heard his talking points, we all know who he is, where he comes from, what his mission is, but it's another thing to hear that from his dad. And cool. I thought it was really, really cool. And it's like, you could think Lou Elizondo's a psyop, right? but when you hear how he was raised, who he was raised by, the values he was instilled with, it really starts to become, for me, just unbelievable. Like it's, you know.
Am I correct in saying if he was, that you would really like second guess your instincts on this stuff big time?
I mean, if he's doing a psyops, he's bringing his father in on it. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the likelihood of that. I don't think is very high. You know, so it was.
But
a
if you
beautiful,
were doing a psyops, wouldn't you go all in?
That's true.
Bring
Maybe
your dad
he's really putting the butter on.
to psyop your dad into lying to the American people. That's hardcore, man. That's hardcore. That is hardcore. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a really, 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 really cool moment. So go check it out. It was only an hour long, hour and like 10, 15 minutes. It was definitely one of my favorite interviews that we've done. It's my favorite interview that I've seen, you know, with Lou Elizondo. It was vulnerability at its best.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward. I missed it.
And number preparing.
2. Sorry, Sean, you had something to say? Were you speaking, Sean? Did you want to talk? Go ahead,
I was
Sean.
going to say maybe it was number 2 best ever because I'm just kidding.
No, that's fair.
That was
well, look, we didn't talk about UAPs, right? That wasn't what the conversation was about. It was more about
just being an
trying.
asshole.
No, I know, but you know, it was more about just trying to get to know who this man is, right?
Yeah, and that's beautiful, and it was very endearing. And when he started coming in talking Cuban right away, and he had his hat on and that big old smile, and everybody was happy. Like, that's genuine. That's a genuine smile. That's a genuine person. I've dealt with so many people in sales, big ticket sales, where my life depended on the sale, you know, in a big way. And I can really hone in on a person's genuineness, if that's a word. But
yeah,
he is 100%. And is he perfect? No, of course he's not going to be perfect. You know, none of us are. But
Right.
it's the intent that drives the action that makes a difference. And his intent is as true as it gets. And if it is a psyop, I quit.
yeah. I quit
yeah,
too.
no shit, right?
I
I'm hanging
quit
up
too.
the Singularity. If this is
Yeah,
psyop,
yeah.
like DCR, we're all done. I'm out of here.
Well, I mean, we talk about this all the time, though. Like, I mean, I wouldn't be out of here, right? Like, I don't identify myself to these UFOs. If the UFOs tomorrow turn out to be top secret U.S. military tech, well, guess what? That's still a really fun story to follow. You know, so
Yeah,
you know,
I will expect
my world won't end.
Well, I just want to point out too that, you know, Elizondo has said very recently even that, you know, his duty and sense of like loyalty is to the country and not to disclosure, right? So like I think that he could be a patriot, he could be saying everything, and everything could be true, but there could be a hint of something that there's something greater that he's not telling us. So there could, you know, there could be a little bit of
That's
psyop,
true.
and there could be him being a honest, you know, genuine person. Those two things could both coexist.
Coexist, right?
Right.
I know. My brain just kind of blew a little bit.
Like, you get the math figured out. Well,
Yeah, I'll get
go
it figured
over
out.
together.
Somebody was like, you guys should do go with the 4-hour live stream. Now, I will say that we are going to be doing a very, very extended live stream. I can't tell you the dates yet, but I can tell you that we're going to be doing multiple days of the Big Phone Home 2. Are we
by the
telling
way-
people how many days?
3 days. Yeah, let's stop.
3 days.
3
Wow.
days. Big
Straight?
phone home. And by the way, we got Lou Elizondo's confirmed. He's going to be joining us. So,
Hell yeah.
you know, he'll be there, and I'm sure, you know, we'll get a lot of the same faces, a lot of the same folks to lend their voices and support. But yeah, a lot of exciting things. We got Ben from that UFO, Ben from the UFO Garage podcast is working on the website. He's
That's
a website
amazing.
designer, so he's volunteering his time. And yeah, it's going to be a killer website. It's going to be something very, very similar to James Fox's website, the UAP Act Now. Just as, you know, very easy, simple to use, straightforward. We're going to give you guys as many tools as possible that you can use all year to be successful in this journey to request more data, more transparency, congressional hearings from our elected representatives, and get the ball rolling on this topic. And at being actively doing it.
Right. It's fantastic. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Make sure you click the subscribe and click the bell if you want to be alerted whenever we go live. And for the big phone home, make sure you follow Luis over at the Unidentified Celebrity Review, where we go live Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We go live here at the Singularity
Monday, Wednesday,
Lab
Friday.
on Tuesday. What did I say? Yes, Monday,
You said
Wednesday,
Monday,
Friday.
Tuesday, Wednesday.
We go live here on the Singularity Lab on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Fantastic. Well, I want to make sure you guys also follow Rather Be Squidding if you are a fan of The Fringe, if you're a fan of Baking Science, Breaking Tech. Sean.
It was funny.
Talking about
it was
Rather.
Funny. It was funny. I mean, he's cutting out Rather. I mean, like, Rather. What's the attorney's name?
Rather Be Squidding.
If you ever want to know how to outlive the end of the universe, go subscribe to my channel because I got an amazing video coming out in the next day or two. And Sean won't be interrupting that. So
I'll find a way.
I'll find a way.
No, he won't. But do you remember? Rather, do you remember the TMZ guy? What's his name?
Harvey
Okay, there we go.
There you go.
Thank you, Rather. We love you. Make sure you also follow Sean Rush at Witness Citizen. Sean and I actually, and both Lou and I have been interviewed by Sean on his channel. So if you want to learn more about what makes Luis tick, make sure you go check that out on his channel. So.
And he's super tired.
Anywhere else people can find you?
Witness Citizen on Twitter, YouTube, Witness Citizen UAP. I have witnesscitizen.com. There's where you'll find my curated documents. I put them up there. And Instagram, which I'm starting to build up too. I put cute little 1-minute clips up there from different interviews
cute.
Stuff like that. And it's really cute. And don't forget, I'm the evil brother, so you better be nice, sir.
It's a Wario.
It's a Wario.
Do you remember, Sean? Yeah. Do you remember the interview over at TMZ?
Had to do it. Had to do it. All right. I mean, that's what you were setting. That was a joke you were setting up, right?
That was a joke.
Okay, all right,
No,
cool. I just want to make. Yeah, I'm glad that. Look at that. See, I told you we were going to start developing this unwritten communication.
Telepathic, my friend.
3,000 miles away. That was a joke, dude. Thank you for stopping by. We love you.
I'm sure he got it right. He knows that joke, doesn't he?
No, of course. Well, he definitely knows now. Definitely knows that.
How's it feel to be to have that Cuban shirt going? You don't have to wear a tie today.
No tie today. I didn't have to worry about my hair. It's actually quite nice. Yeah, I miss it. If I'm not gonna lie, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's got a collar. I mean, if you wanna wear, if you feel it, if it works for you.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for the permission. Where are we going with this conversation? Are we ending this show? What's happening?
The show's over. We're done.
Well, we're still live.
Oh, right. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Be sure to follow the Singularity Lab if you're interested in breaking technology, breaking science, UAP stories, UAP breaking news as well. We love that as well. So thank you guys for joining us. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, and follow Luis at the Unidentified Celebrity Review.
Yeah. We'll see you guys tomorrow, 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
Oh, yeah. By the way, our guest is going to be Terrace Matla. Curator at the University of Maryland. He's going to be bringing us pictures and information on Skinwalker Ranch. It's going to be a lot of cool stuff tomorrow, so you're not going to want to miss the show. And that's it.
Seth Kocher says, I only barely spammed you guys. We love you, Seth. Don't ever feel bad about spamming us. We love you, buddy. Yeah, that's all I got. Oh, I'm actually going to be out of town. I'm going on vacation with my family. My parents and my sister are coming down to visit. So we're going to be out of town for about 6-7 days.
So no Mike tomorrow. We got Rather is going to be our co-host, and then Rather's going to be our co-host pretty much all next week. So
yep, and then no Singularity next week, but we will be back with a vengeance the following week from like the rest of history, pretty much.
Yep. But we still do have UCR episodes Monday, Wednesday, Friday next week. So stick around. We'll have stuff for you.
All right.
You ready to go?
You want to play us out?
Let's do it.
Play us out.
There you go, Jack. I'm itching my nose. You happy? This is for you, buddy. All right, we'll see you.